Today, we're uncovering the absolutely captivating historical drama behind one of the most famous short texts in the world. It's a story from the early Islamic period in Mecca, and it's got it all: status, retaliation, and a deeply, deeply poetic sense of justice.
So who is the most infamous, unnamed woman in history? It's kind of this incredible historical mystery. You see, in the Qur'an, specifically in Surah 111, there's this figure who is completely stripped of her name. Instead of being remembered for who she actually was immortalized solely by her terrible actions. She is literally known entirely by her sin. So, who was she?
Well, her actual name was Arwa Bint Harb, though she also went by Jamila. And I need to stress here, she was no ordinary citizen. Arwa belonged to one of the absolute most honorable, wealthy, and elite families of the Quraysh tribe. She was the sister of Abu Sufyan and the wife of Abu Lahab. But alongside that high social status, she had a notoriously toxic reputation. Historical sources describe her as bold, incredibly loud, and possessing this remarkably sharp, vicious tongue.
To really understand how she lost her name to history, we've got to look at the catalyst. During the early days of Mecca, the prophet was divinely ordered to take his message public. So, he stood on Mount Safa and called out to the various clans. They all gather around, right? Including Arwa's husband, Abu Lahab. When the prophet warned them of a severe punishment, Abu Lahab just immediately lashed out, yelling, "May you be perished, is that what you called us for?" It was this deeply hostile, very public rejection. And almost immediately after that, Surah 111 was revealed in divine response.
And that brings us directly to the text of the revelation itself. It directly addressed this confrontation, declaring, "May the hands of Abu Lahab perish, and may he himself perish." It condemned his wealth, stating it totally wouldn't benefit him. But it didn't just stop with him. It permanently branded his wife, Arwa, with this unique, enduring title, the Carrier of the Firewood. In just a handful of words, her legacy was completely cemented.
Now, what's really interesting here is that the exact moment she heard this revelation about herself, she didn't reflect, and she certainly didn't back down. No, she went on this immediate, furious campaign of retaliation. She angrily gathered up a handful of rocks, stormed right into the sanctuary near the Kaaba, looking to physically attack the prophet. And to top it all off, she actually weaponized her status as a poet to broadcast her hatred to literally anyone who would listen.
Standing right there near the Kaaba, she recited this poetry. She said, "We disobeyed the disgraced one, we rejected his commands, and we despised his religion." She used her platform as an influential elite to loudly broadcast her total rejection. I mean, she wasn't just angry, she was actively inciting animosity.
But here is where the historical account takes this dramatic, almost miraculous turn. Arwa marched right up to where the prophet and his companion Abu Bakr were sitting. She looks directly at Abu Bakr with these rocks in her hands and demands, "Where is your friend? By Allah, I hate him, and I'm going to hurt him." She was standing right in front of the very man she wanted to harm, yet she was divinely blinded to his presence. She completely missed him, and eventually just stormed off in total frustration.
So, decoding the metaphor, why exactly was she permanently branded the Carrier of Firewood? Well, it wasn't just some random insult. In the Arabic language, this single descriptive phrase carries astonishing depth, flawlessly capturing her entire character in just a few syllables. Let's dig into that. Just look at how many layers exist in this one phrase. On a strictly literal level, she physically carried thorns and broken wood to scatter on the prophet's path. Metaphorically, it refers to the heavy burden of sins she'd carry in the hereafter. But culturally, the Arabs use this exact term to describe someone who stirs up hatred, someone who literally brings destruction to their own city. And finally, it highlighted her incredible stinginess. Let's actually unpack a couple of those a bit more.
First, the concept of tale-bearing, or gossip. This is massive. The source notes that gossiping is literally like carrying firewood to ignite fires of hatred between people. Think about it. When you spread a rumor or whisper malicious words, you are acting as the fuel. You are the one igniting the animosity. Arwa was notorious for this. She was the premier gossip who worked tirelessly to stoke those fires of hatred in her community.
And then we have the incredible irony of her wealth. Remember, Arwa came from one of the most elite, wealthy families of the Quraysh, yet she was known to be unbelievably miserly. She was so stingy that rather than paying a servant, she would literally carry heavy loads of firewood on her own back just to save a few coins. She was this fabulously wealthy elite who acted like a poor laborer purely out of greed.
All of this sets up a deeply profound theological framework of poetic justice. In this tradition, the punishment is always parallel to the crime. It is of the exact same nature as the action. Because Arwa spent her life carrying physical thorns, and because she carried the metaphorical firewood of gossip to ignite hatred, her ultimate consequence is intrinsically tied to fire and wood.
This poetic justice continues in the chilling final verse of the surah, which states that around her neck will be a rope of masad, or palm fiber. Scholars have heavily debated the terrifying nature of this rope. Some say it's the literal rough palm fiber she used in life to carry her wood. Others interpret it as a massive iron chain, 70 cubits long. It's been described as a twisting, choking cord made of harsh materials, or even the heavy axle of a pulley violently dragging her.
And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate irony. Arwa owned this incredibly expensive, prized necklace. During her life, she used to mockingly swear that she would sell this beautiful piece of jewelry just to fund her fight against the Prophet. And so, the very symbol of her wealth and vanity that she weaponized for cruelty is symbolically transformed into that heavy, twisting chain around her neck in the hereafter.
All right, let's look at some timeless takeaways here, because this is so much more than just a history lesson. Why does a brief text about an unnamed woman from over 1,000 years ago remain universally relevant for us today? What's the core message we should be taking away from this?
The practical lessons are pretty striking. First off, wealth, power, and elite lineage, they offer zero protection from the consequences of your actions. Arwa had all three, and they absolutely couldn't save her. Second, arrogance and cruelty inevitably orchestrate their own downfall. And perhaps most importantly for our daily lives, words matter. Gossip and tale-bearing harm communities just as deeply and are judged just as harshly as throwing physical stones.
The source text leaves us with this incredibly powerful summarizing thought, and it goes, "A person who lives in a certain way will die in a certain way and be resurrected the same way." It really speaks to the inescapable trajectory of our habits. I mean, you cannot spend your life planting thorns and carrying firewood to burn others and somehow expect to be surrounded by gardens in the end. Your daily actions form an unbreakable chain.
Which leads us to our final thought. Arwa was stripped of her name, remembered entirely by the harmful legacy she built with her words, her wealth, and her actions. So ask yourself, what legacy are your daily actions and words building for you right now? Are you igniting fires, or are you putting them out?